So when printing wall covering, the secret is not to be afraid of it. It's quite a simple process if you follow a few simple guidelines, and most of them involve simple planning, simple thought process around what the media is. Wallpaper is designed with a particular emboss, so it reflects light in a particular manner. So it's probably worth thinking about how you're going to hang those. You wouldn't want to create a jigsaw puzzle of different panels because they're going to reflect light differently. We're going to get different colors reflecting off. So you've got to think of it. It needs to hang vertically in the orientation in which it's provided, and no rotation of those tiles. They all need to be perfect. And that's going to give you the best possible continuation and continuity of color throughout the entire graphic that's there. Batch to batch, there can be subtle variations or subtle changes in color. What we suggest doing is making sure the whole job will fit neatly onto a single roll. Of course, if you're doing a room that is much bigger than a roll, and it'd be lovely if you're doing a giant hotel or something else, think about where the join point is going to be. So plan your job so you're printing along a wall, and maybe you would change the media or roll or batch at a corner where you're going to have a natural transition in light and natural difference in join points, so you won't see any slight variation that may occur. Temperature conditions and humidity can affect print, so you want nice, stable, consistent results. Make sure your printer is in a good running order. We're very fortunate here. We have the new HP Latex 800W, and it has eliminated many of the challenges many people see with length deviations or color fluctuations. They really have managed to make this one work well. But also think about the person who's fitting the job at site. It's all good and well, we just print it on the take-up and go, marvelous, my job is over. But you can make it a lot easier for them. If they're going to be rolling out on a workbench, on a floor and having to trim, why not take a moment, look at your take-up system and wind with the print side in. That way, when it gets to site, nobody's hands are ever touching the print, and when the fitter rolls the job out, the print side is always up, there's going to be no dirt, no scuffs, no deviation, and the only side that's going to touch the ground is the bit that's going to be stuck to the wall with glue, so it won't really matter. So think about where your job's going to be fitted and for the fitter, and try and make their life as simple as possible. What I'm going to do is go into tiling, and I'm going to choose, or try and choose, the easiest possible area to make joining those panels as seamless as possible. So instead of having a join where we can see it running through the birds at the top and the birds at the bottom, I'm simply going to move that tile across so it's falling completely into a flat background area, making the join seamless. And similarly, I can move them along, trying to find an area where it has the least possible joining connection points. So of course, this isn't always possible. Here we have the kind of graphic which displays that you're just naturally going to have multiple join points. So in which case, think about your fitter and how wide each panel is going to be. Maybe don't have a tiny slot on the very edge of one, rather have them evenly spaced all the way across, making their life much simpler in a fitting format. Always also remember to put your overlap on. Here's the overlap to make sure that he has something to trim back so you can do a lovely splice join. And from a bleed point of view, make sure you have sufficient bleed all the way around the outside of the image so that he's got room to work if the wall's on perfectly square.
So, as you can see here, we're working with the image that Graham printed out for us. Now, you will see here also that I've trimmed off, before we apply any material, we trimmed off the unprinted, unwanted material from the edges, from the left and right hand edges. Now, as we said, as Graham said, he's printing with a 50mm bleed. Just as a tip, as a trick, if you like, to make life easier for yourselves, is we've located and used 50mm pins. So as we have a 50mm bleed, we're looking at 50mm overlap, we're looking at lining the head of the pin up with the edge of the printed material. Where the tip falls, just slot it into the material like that. I've got one, I've already put a couple in, got one at the top, one in the middle, and one down towards the bottom. So I'm now going to put the adhesive on the wall. So this is Murabond Heavy, absolutely perfect for Digimura 2.1 and 1.1. I think I'll let the actions speak for themselves rather than me, and I'm just going to drop the material out. No real fineries on the matching at this point, so now I can get down and match the pattern, the graphic at eye level. And I say at eye level because if this is a tall drop, maybe 4 meters, 6 meters, 9 meters, nobody's going to be looking at it at the top there, they're all going to be looking at where they're standing. So I've got our pins just as a guide, and you can see because we're working with a wet adhesive, we can actually slide the material around. It holds the product in place. Now, sections where we have things like diagonal lines, in this case the stem of the leaf, because we are not leaving the overlaps in place, we're going to overlap and trim and hopefully produce a seamless finish. So we're matching it here, but we're going to be cutting back here somewhere. So just to give us a window into what's going on behind us, cut a shallow notch into the material. It's important not to go past the halfway mark because this is where you're going to be cutting. And it just gives you an insight into what's going on behind. I'm going to repeat the same down here. Now, pull out the excess material, lay it in place, and I'm going to start fixing it to the wall. We have two spatulas, one for laying the material on and for trimming tops and bottoms. However, if you've got a fresh print, something with a dark colour, it's possible that a tool like this might actually just bruise the print a little, so you don't want that. We have the other spatula, exactly the same, except it has a PTFE bead fixed to it. So I'm going to use this one. Now, anybody that's used to working with self-adhesive material will notice the obvious difference there, and that is that I'm going up and down. The reason for that is in laying the material on with a spatula, it causes the material to maybe just pull tight slightly, and as the adhesive dries it will pull tight and just recover slightly. So if you go top to bottom, any recovery is only seen at the top and bottom and would never ever be noticed. If you go side to side in the way that you would do traditionally with a self-adhesive material, that recovery would take place at the joint. We don't want that. So straightforward, up and down motion, and get the material laid onto the wall. Just because it's matched down here doesn't necessarily mean it's going to match all the way. So you do need to be checking your match points. So we're using a snap blade knife, and it's key to make sure that the material fits the wall itself. So I'm having the spatula flat to the wall, knife flat to the spatula, and trim effectively, in this case, cutting onto the ceiling line. And again, spatula flat to the wall surface, knife flat to the spatula, and draw it down. So, first things first, we're going to open the edge of the two pieces. So it exposes the rear wall, and just with a small amount of adhesive on the brush, I'm just going to lay some adhesive into the space where the joint is going to be made. Not too much, because we don't want to be squeezing it out into the face of the material. Now, if we were to cut straight onto the wall, we run the risk of damaging the wall surface. So we want to protect that wall, and we have a plastic strip which is 0.8 of a mil thick and the magic number 50 mil wide. So it's equal to our overlap on the printed wall covering. Just lay that in where the edge of the material falls. We want to hold the underlap of the material nice and tight to these plastic strips so that we get a nice neat joint. Once we've done that, just using your hands. You don't want to be using a spatula at this point, because we are going to be laying the material onto the plastic strip, and it's a hard plastic edge beneath the wall covering. And if we trail over that with a spatula, the chances are we'd damage the print. So everything's nice and tight to the wall. I'll line my cutting strip up with the centre of the overlap and the centre of my plastic strip, and using a snap blade knife with a freshly snapped blade, I'm going to just cut down the two layers. You can see I've actually just using the same hand with a knife to hold the strip in place. It's important once you start making the cut that you don't take your knife out, because you'll never find the exact point, and it means that you've got an uneven joint. So take out your waste pieces and take out the plastic strips. So I'm just going to, a moist brush, just lay some fresh adhesive in there again. Piece was to the wall first, that goes back first. So much like we started with our matching at eye level, we're going to close the joint starting from eye level. So we've done the middle and the top, and then just drop back and close the joint up on the lower section. An overlap and trim joint using Dimatur 2.1.